Hi everyone, welcome to another reading vlog. Today is Eid and it's a little bit of a melancholic one. This is probably my third Eid away from my family due to COVID, and there's just a lot going on in the world. There is an invasion of Palestine and it's just a tough Eid. This one especially. The only upside is I got my second dose of the COVID shot earlier today. I'm feeling pretty good physically, all things considered. I was a little woozy for a little bit, but I'm doing just fine now, just a little tired. And I'm just in need of a good distraction right now. I've been on a little bit of a romance binge. I finished, I think, 3 romances back to back, but I'm a little tired of romance right now. If I don't read a story that has someone being threatened by a knife, I don't want it. I will actually scream. So I think I'm in a bit of a fantasy mood. There's a couple books that I'm trying to figure out if that's what I want to read next. I feel like I'm overthinking this. I should just pick up a book and read it. But as per usual, I am overthinking everything. So let me grab the books that I want to read and we'll make a choice. I lied. While 2 out of these 3 books are fantasies, 1 is just literary contemporary fiction that is highly, highly anticipated on my TBR, so this is going to be a tough decision no matter what. So we have We Hunt the Flame by Hafsa Faizal. The next book is a chunky one, and I don't know whether I have the bandwidth to read a really chunky book. And when I say chunky, I mean this baby is like 900 pages, and that is The Priory of the Orange Tree by Samantha Shannon. And last but not least, I have Detransition Baby by Tori Peters. I don't know. So we are down between these 2. I'm just going to have to like eeny, meeny, miny, moe it. Okay. Detransition Baby it is. Or I guess it's the afternoon. It's 1 p.m. so good afternoon. I am feeling pretty okay. I was expecting the second dose to take a lot more out of me than it is, and I'm like knocking really aggressively on wood. Hopefully it stays that way because I'm feeling pretty normal. My arm isn't even all that sore. Like, it's a little sore, but my arm was definitely a lot more sore when I got the first dose. So fingers crossed that everything stays good. It is a stunning Friday, honestly. It's like 75 degrees out right now, so I think I'm going to run out and do some errands. There's a few things that I need to pick up for around the apartment. I recently acquired, I bought a new dining table for my kitchen from IKEA, and they were out of the chairs that I wanted to pair with it. So I'm going to go back and see if they have it in stock, because the guy who was checking me out said that they would be back in stock on Friday. Other than that, there's like not really any plans I know I have a little bit of prep work to do before tomorrow. I have an interview that you guys will be seeing on this channel within the coming weeks that I'm really, really excited about. So I just need to do a little bit of finalization work for that. And other than that, I think I'm just planning to enjoy the Friday. I just have a blank slate for today and I don't know what to do with myself. In the midst of all of that, I am going to try to sneak in a few chapters of Detransition Baby here and there. I'm 2 chapters in right now, and man, that book really, really packs a punch in the first chapter. It really just draws you in. But yeah, I will try to bring you guys along with me as I kind of run all of my errands for today. So I will see you guys at the next place. I'm home, I think, for the evening. I'm not quite sure. Didn't anticipate how tired I was gonna be today. Like, I still feel fine, but I was exhausted while I was out. So I went out, grabbed some lunch because hungry, hadn't eaten breakfast. The only thing I had this morning was like 2 cups of cha, which is just the Bengali word for tea. I had 2 cups of tea. And yeah, so when I went out, I ended up on Newbury Street, ended up going to Dirty Water Pizza, having a couple of slices, and then I grabbed boba because there was a new boba shop downstairs, like underneath Dirty Water, so I had to try it, obviously, and it was really quite good. But then I tried walking down the length of Newbury because there's a couple stores that I just haven't been to in forever, and legit my heart started going pitter patter. Like, I was feeling like I was working out, like I was on a run. It was pretty bad. So ended up just coming home. But one thing that I did do before grabbing lunch was stopping by at the library and picking up all of the books that I had on hold because they were all ready. I need to stop going on the library catalog and just requesting a bunch of books that I quite frankly have zero capacity to read. So we're going to do a very quick library haul. The first book is Know My Name by Chanel Miller. This has been on my TBR for ages. I'm sure you guys all know about Chanel Miller and this book, and there's not really much else that I can say on it except that I'm really looking forward to reading it, and I'm extremely sorry that justice was not served in her situation. The next book is another memoir. It is All You Can Ever Know by Nicole Chung. It is a memoir about her experience growing up as a transracial adoptee. Now we're going to launch into all of the fiction books that finally came through for me. The first one being Piranesi by Susanna Clark. I added this to my TBR a few months before it was released, and honestly, Susanna Clark has been on my to read list for ages. I bought Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell a while ago, and quite frankly, I haven't picked it up because the book is 1,000 pages long, and I just never felt like picking up a book that chunky. Actually, I have it. One second. Let me show you this book. Look at this thing, and this is paperback. I literally remember getting this because I didn't look at the page count when I bought it. I just had heard really good things about it. And when I took it out of the box, I literally gasped because it was so big. Not that I have anything against big books. I love really, really long books. The more pages, the better. But I think this past year, I haven't been reading a ton of really long books just because I haven't had the attention span or the capacity to dedicate to a really long book. So it's just been a little intimidating. So this one's still on my TBR, but when I heard that Piranesi, I hope I'm saying that right, when I heard this book was considerably shorter, I immediately knew that I had to read it. So I took it out from the library. I've been waiting for this for probably 2 or 3 months now. This book is highly wanted in the Boston community. The next book is My Sister the Serial Killer. The premise of this just sounds super fun. I haven't read a good thriller in a while, and I think this gives off thriller vibes. I might be totally wrong, but I like to go into a lot of fiction books, especially thrillers, knowing as little as possible. The next book is also one that I've been waiting forever for because it is constantly out from the library, and that is The House on the Cerulean Sea by TJ Klune. All over Bookstagram, all over BookTube, all over Book Talk. Everyone adores this book, so I'm not surprised that it is constantly out from the library, but God bless, my hold finally came through. The next book that I got is, I think, a romance. It's kind of got like that romance vibe, and Sonia Lawley is a romance author as far as I know, but I've never read anything by her, and I picked up Serena Singh Flips the Script. I also don't really know much about this book. I just saw the cover and I thought it was a really cool cover, and so I put it on hold. And finally, probably the book that I am most excited about from the library is Black Sun by Rebecca Roanhorse. I adored the premise to this book, and like it is just such a stunning book. Like the cover, the inside map, I'm obsessed with it, quite frankly, and I've really only read the first page, but I'm so in the mood for fantasy, so even though I have to put off a couple of my bought TBR books to make my way through this really chonky library stack, it's worth it. So, one sec. Can this even get all in frame? Yeah. Good luck me. The plan for the rest of the afternoon is to just check up on my plants. A couple of them are in dire need of a drink. My pothos leaves are curling. My calathea is acting up. She needs a nice drench. My calathea hates me. I try to do nothing but love her, but she just truly hates me. It's fine. So yeah, just gonna do a little bit of plant checking in and read. I don't think I'm gonna tackle this library stack. I'm going to stick with Detransition Baby because literally I'm like 2 chapters in. It is so confusing to me. Just the level of drama that's already played out in the first couple of chapters is peak literature to me. So yeah, I'm looking forward to just sitting down for a little bit and actually making my way through the book. Good morning. It's actually pretty bright and early. I think it's only like 7 on Saturday. And the only reason I'm up so early is because I have some prep work to do for an interview today that I'm doing. I managed to read a couple more chapters of Detransition Baby last night before bed, and the plot thickens. This book is just all about relationships, both cisgender and transgender relationships, and the dynamics in a transgender relationship versus the dynamics between a cisgender transgender relationship. It's been really interesting. Obviously, I'm not a part of the transgender community, and there's just been a lot that I've been learning about and how they approach their relationships, because I remember just even in the first chapter of Detransition Baby, one of the main characters, Reese, she is a transgender woman. She wants nothing more than to be a mother, and she sees that as kind of like the pinnacle of womanhood, and she just desperately wants a child. Not just because she sees it as the pinnacle of womanhood, she like actually wants a child, but she also does see motherhood as the pinnacle of womanhood. Anyway, so her relationship to Ames kind of blew up because she started dating Ames when he had transitioned, so prior to his detransition. So she had been dating Ames when Ames was Amy, and since then, some time has passed. Ames has then been sleeping with a cisgender hetero woman, his boss, quite ironically, and he accidentally got her pregnant. So it's just been this wild ride of all of them kind of finding their bearings around each other. Granted, Reese and Katrina, the woman that is pregnant, have an idea that the other exists, but they have not met yet. So I'm going to be really interested to see how everything, you know, kind of culminates, because it's a lot. And quite frankly, like, when Katrina found out that Ames had been Amy in the past, she hadn't even heard out his reasons of detransitioning and just like outed him at a company meeting. And like, I don't care how upset you are, that is not okay. So I at first found myself a little bit sympathetic to her, but not so much anymore. I'm really not a fan of her right now. So we'll see how everything plays out. Also, I just want to say I adore the morning sunlight in my apartment. Like, I live for springs and summers where the sun just streams in. I have like a couple southeast facing windows and they're just great. I feel like such a plant in them. Also, speaking of plants, she's doing okay. She is doing fine. Fingers crossed she stays that way. Put out a little humidifier of distilled water for her and my black velvet alocasia as well. My cacti are all watered. I have a few more plants that I do need to water today, specifically like my spider plant and my monstera minima. But everything else I watered last week, so I should be okay with that. But yeah, I will probably eventually do a plant tour sometime, but today is not that day. So I just wanted to pop in to close out this reading vlog and just share with you guys my thoughts on Detransition Baby, because I finished it. Wow, there is actually quite a bit to process. For my initial thoughts, there's just a couple things that I want to say. I really liked the book. I really enjoyed the story. I love a character-driven plot. One thing that I don't personally like is the pregnancy trope in literature, but the way that it was done in Detransition Baby, it was done in a way that I actually found quite interesting and engaging. The pregnancy trope, for example, it always brings out the messiness of characters and not necessarily in a good way. However, the messiness and chaotic energy of the characters in Detransition Baby really culminated through the involved pregnancy and introducing queer triad parenting. There was just a lot to unpack with the plot. Just as a disclaimer, if I get into any spoilers as I'm talking about this book, I will put an image of the book somewhere on screen, because quite frankly, I don't know if I can talk about the book without getting too spoilery. Whenever you see the image, you'll know to mute me or fast forward. So throughout the whole story, as you're watching things in the plot unfold, you're kind of left with this overarching question of why Ames detransitioned. what happened between Ames and Reese. Why did he detransition if he still primarily feels like a woman? When it's finally revealed that he detransitioned out of a desire to protect what is his and feelings of extreme hopelessness and inadequacies that was catalyzed by Reese's infidelity during their relationship, you really can't help but feel incredibly sympathetic to him, especially with how he navigates his queer identity. Identity is not a one-size-fits-all. Ames is still a trans woman, no matter how he presents himself to the world. And conversely, Katrina trying to force Ames into a father position was wrong. However, one thing that I will say is that you are not made to view Reese as a villain in all of this. If anything, you are kind of made to vilify Katrina, but I'll get into that into a second. With Reese in particular, like with Ames, you are incredibly sympathetic to all of her desires and all of the circumstances in her childhood that culminated into the person she is today. How desperately she wants a child, for example, or how gender performance is something that she finds incredibly validating. Katrina was integral to the plot in that she was the one who was carrying the child. However, while there are moments in which you are sympathetic to Katrina and her situation, she oscillates from sympathetic and incredibly self-aware to outright homophobic. There's an instance in the book where she outs Ames when she's incredibly drunk at a business meeting, which then subsequently gets out to all of their peers and their co-workers, and it's just ludicrous. I don't care how upset you are, you do not out someone like that when they are choosing not to be out. On top of that, once they kind of establish later in the plot that they're going to go for this queer triad parenting module, she sort of just rewrites her own narrative into that of a queer person, especially in front of her friends, and sort of co-opts that experience. And look, it's perfectly fine to question your own identity and your preferences. I am in the constant process of that. But the way in which Katrina does it, kind of to tokenize it, makes you vilify her. This book also really made me think about parenthood in a way that it made me examine my own privileges. For example, I'm 26 years old and I'm brown, and one question that I get all the time from family members is, when are you going to have a kid? Or when are you having children? Irrespective of whether or not I'm in a relationship, just an FYI. But I'm 26 and kids aren't something that are even on my radar. They're not something that I'm even sure that I want. And every year that I grow older, I'm more and more solidified in that desire. However, Reese's greatest desire is to be a mother. I kind of mentioned this before, but she views motherhood as the pinnacle of womanhood. And there's a lot of instances where it's discussed within the book how nobody questions whether or not a cisgender woman has a child, or desires a child. But the minute a transgender woman desires or has a child, that is always ultimately questioned. Anyway, this book is incredibly chaotic and messy and unapologetically trans. I am so certain there are several things in the plot and in the dialogue that just went over my head, and that's okay. Ultimately, this book was not written for me. It was written for the trans femme community, especially the white trans femme community. I can still appreciate it, and I really did. I can't believe that this was a debut novel, and I will definitely be picking up anything else that Tori Peters writes in the future. But yeah, like I said, these are just my initial thoughts. I'm sure if you give me a week to kind of think on it, I will have a lot more things to chat about, but I wanted to keep this conclusion kind of brief. That's it for me. Thank you so much for joining me this Eid weekend and keeping me company as I read Detransition Baby and had lone Eid festivities. I hope you are all having a wonderful morning, afternoon, evening, or night, just whenever you're watching this. I hope you are being kind to yourself. My social media links will be in the description bar below, and I will catch you all in my next video. Bye!